Oh, that's a new feature. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the ADR meeting to order. My name is Mark Kruchnet, ADR member, current chair. I'll let the other ADR members quickly go around and introduce themselves, and then I'll go over the procedures we use for the meeting, as many of you have not been to these before.
I'll start. I'm Steven Sutro. I'm an ADR member, and I'm also presenting a project tonight.
I'm Joey Buckingham, ADR member.
Hi, Laura Dewar, ADR member.
Is that me at the end, Mark Fritz, ADR member?
Yes. Thanks, Mark. Great. So before we get to the approval of the minutes of the last meeting, just for the very few of you who are in the audience tonight, the way that we do this is the town presents a project, and then the ADR asks for any clarifications. The owner and their team further presents the project, and the ADR members can ask any questions they have. And at that point, once we're all done with our questions, we open it up to the public, and any member of the public, whether they're a neighbor or not, can comment on the project. And then we bring it back to the ADR for our recommendations towards town council. And actually, before we get, we'll do the approval of the minutes first and then open time. Okay, I read over the minutes for May 18th, and I had no problem with them. Did any ADR member have a problem with them? Or does someone want to second the motion to approve them?
I second the motion.
Thanks, Joey. Great. Now we have an open time for public comment. If anyone in the audience wants to say anything for up to 3 minutes on an item that's not on the agenda for this evening. Okay, the first item is 70 Wellington Avenue, the Ghirardelli residence, and I will let the town present it first, and then we will have the design team further present the project.
Thank you, Chair Kruchnet, Planner Matthew Weintraub. The item before you is the Mangus and Ghirardelli residence, 70 Wellington Avenue. Property is located on the south side of Wellington Avenue, cross street of Baywood. Property characteristics are the property is a constrained lot. It is less than the minimum lot size for the district, clearly has an irregular shape, sort of missing a piece of the front and side yard that constrains the development opportunities. The average slope is 9%, which is not extremely steep. In fact, most of the lot is fairly flat with the exception of the back portion. However, it does contain slope hazard 3, which requires it to be considered a hillside lot for the purposes of the code. The existing property has existing non-conforming floor area and setbacks, and development dates per the county assessor are 1949 and 1954, and we don't have any other permits for the property. The proposal is to demolish the existing residence, construct a new single-family residence. On the left is the existing site plan, on the right is the proposed. The new residence would be built in approximately generally the same location and footprint as the existing building. Couple notes on the code requirements. Because it is a hillside lot, it does not actually have a slope greater than 30%, so the hillside lot FAR requirements don't kick in. So it's actually subject to the 20% FAR for the district. However, it already exceeds that. So per town policy, the proposal is to reconstruct that existing legal non-conforming floor area. Also, with respect to being a hillside lot, the side setbacks are increased from 15 to 25. So if we look at the proposed project, although it would meet the minimum district setbacks for the district, it does not meet the more extensive hillside lot setbacks, which are only required because of the existence of that slope stability zone, not because of the actual slope. So we'd also note that the front setback would be decreased slightly The rear setback would be essentially unchanged. This east side setback would be reduced by about 15 feet. I will skip ahead just to public comment and note that both the owners at the east side and across the street have indicated support of the project. They would be the ones that would be closest to the reduced setback encroachment. With respect to the front and the east side, the neighbors closest have indicated support. On the west side, it would actually increase the setback from 14 feet to 20 feet. The property owner on the west side has indicated some concerns, which I'll cover in a minute.
So, Matthew, just for clarification, the east side setback is what's closest to the driveway and the adjacent neighbor that's slightly uphill?
Yes, thank you for that. So north is to the left of the page. So east is to the top of the page, and that's the setback that would be reduced and has the support of the neighbor. West is to the south of the screen, and that's the setback that would be increased, but also there is a privacy concern on that side, which I will be discussing in a minute. The proposal would also rehabilitate the landscape consistent with the fire department's requirements, and that would essentially be adding shrubs and hedges along the front and west side of the property. Minimal landscape additions at other portions of the property, primarily due to restrictions with the vegetation management plan. Here's architectural renderings and details. I won't spend a lot of time on that. I'm sure the designer can speak more eloquently on these quality materials and design. With east side elevation, this is again the elevation where the setback would be decreased. And this does have the support of the neighbors both to the side and across the street that would be most affected by that height increase. And this is the west side elevation. This is where the setback would actually be increased from 14 feet to 20 feet on that side. But as you can see, there is a height increase and quite a bit of additional glazing that occurs now at the higher second story. And that has been expressed as a concern by the neighbor at 66 Wellington. This is the notice area was 500 feet for the hillside lot requirement. Commenters in support. There's been a complete transmittal of commenters in support to the ADR group. They do include, as I mentioned, the adjacent owners at 73 and 74 Wellington, adjacent to the proposed decreased setbacks. And the comment of concern is from the adjacent owner at 66 Wellington, concerned about the potential privacy impacts of that second story window block. So staff's recommendation is staff requests that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project consistent with the design review criteria and standards contained in the Ross Municipal Code. I'm available to answer further questions, and I will stop sharing my presentation now unless there are questions pertaining to any of the visuals I just showed.
Actually, Matthew, I have one quick question. Could you go back a couple slides? There. Forward one. There. On the roof, what are those three? They look like clear boxes on the roof. I can't tell what that detail is. Maybe Stephen can. Do you see what I'm seeing in the middle of the roof there? There's three boxes.
Yeah, I thought there were skylights right here, here, and here.
Okay, that was my question. Thanks.
And I will stop sharing now, but let me know if you need any further visuals.
Stephen, does your design team want to present, or how do you want to go about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we can be pretty brief, but first, Nick and Ashley would like to introduce themselves and just give a little bit of context to the project. And so I'll let them speak if they have the ability.
Yes, can everyone hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Ashley. This is Nick Ghirardelli. We've had the pleasure of meeting some of you guys, but it's really nice to put faces to the names for everyone else. We're really excited to show you guys the work that's gone into our new home at 70 Wellington. And just wanted to express that kind of we've spent the past year since we bought the property really getting to know the neighbors and the neighborhood, and we could not be more excited to hopefully improve the Winship Park area with this new design. We're excited to hear all of your comments. We also wanted to read a letter from Keith Mattos, who's the neighbor at 74 Wellington, so up the street from us. He was unable to join tonight due to his daughter's birthday dinner. But he did want to submit a letter kind of in addition to the original letter he submitted, but also just have us read something into the record for him. So I'll pass it over to Nick to read that letter for everyone.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great night. Here's the letter from Keith. It goes, I've lived at 74 Wellington for 15 years. I'm the direct uphill neighbor to Nick and Ashley Ghirardelli. They have gone above and beyond to design a home that respects their neighbors and an aesthetic and scale of the neighborhood. The reality is that we live in a hilly neighborhood where homes are somewhat close together. The downhill neighbor is inevitably visible from the uphill neighbor and vice versa. Ashley and Nick's new home increasing in height to bring the home up to allowable code. This, of course, means that I'll see more of their house and their upstairs bedroom from my home, but they've designed it conscientiously with the most lived-in spaces, which are the kitchen and living room, are now downstairs, and the focal point of the home is towards the street as opposed to where the neighbors are. I'm entirely comfortable with the changes given the neighborhood and respectful and kind neighbors they've proven themselves to be over the past year, and a significant increase in value in this home brings to the entirety of Winship Park. The house as it sits has never been updated, is falling apart, and everyone in the neighborhood has been hoping someone like them will come and bring it up to the same standards as the rest of the neighborhood. I am so grateful it's a lovely family doing it in a respectful way, as opposed to the many of the flips you see taking place nearby. I sincerely hope the Ross ADR takes all this into account when weighing in Nick and Ashley's design against any potential negative comments they receive. Ashley and Nick have done a beautiful job with a very challenging lot. Their full support of their project so that they can proceed forward expeditiously. So that's all the letter from Keith, and he just wanted to read it for the ADR group here. So that's all we have.
I can pass it back to you, Stephen.
Okay, thanks. Matthew, could I, is it possible for John Simonek, who's here, to screen share?
I do believe Patrick can provide him that capability.
Thanks. So I think John will queue up the zoom into the site plan. I think it's clear, but so as Matthew described, the home sits on a very atypical kind of pie-shaped parcel that tapers down to a point at the street. And a lot of that is taken up by the redwood tree that is significant and really pretty in the middle of the yard. And on the other side from the redwood is where the slope begins. And so historically, I think the house was placed in the right spot, and we're not seeking to change that. This has very little grading associated with it. I think the delta is about 10 cubic yards. And so I think that, you know, we're trying to preserve the redwood. We worked with an arborist to look at the root zone and so forth, and we don't want to get into the hillside. So I think the house is in the right spot. So as Matthew said, it's a 1-for-1 replacement in terms of the square footage. And in terms of the position relative to the existing, it's getting farther away from the one neighbor that we feel like is most impacted. Although the uphill neighbor sees more of the house, the one that's kind of more close quarters feeling is the one downhill. Let's see. So we tried to design it, and I think the neighbor uphill in the letter alluded to this because they've had discussions with Nick and Ashley about the intent of where the living space is. The existing house has the living space on the second floor, or what's kind of a partially staggered second floor. What's down at the ground level right now is kind of a tiki bar. There's a basement space that's been outfitted as an entertaining space that opens up to the side yard. The kitchen is on the second level, and then their bedrooms above. And so we're making it more of a traditional floor plan by putting the living spaces downstairs. Nick and Ashley were intent on using the front yard, and you can see that when you walk by their house where their kids are usually playing. And so even though you will exit the house with the redwood tree in the way, we want to have them be able to take advantage of the yard and use the yard. So we're putting the living space down on the ground level and putting the bedrooms above. So I recognize that the house is getting a little bit bigger and that the windows above will be more visible to everyone. The hope is that Nick and Ashley will be using window treatments, as people do in bedrooms, and be there less than they are in the public spaces or the living spaces of the house, and that will make for kind of a reasonable relationship between the properties. Also, because of the way that the downhill neighbor's house is designed, it faces away. All of the windows associated with the living spaces face away from this subject property. And what you really see out of the current windows of this home is the roof of the downhill neighbor. Anyway, so in the design of the house, and John, maybe you can flip to the rendering from the street perspective. We've tried to break up the bulk and mass and use bits and bobs from Spanish style homes and from precedents that Nick and Ashley have found walking around Ross, articulating the little colonnade at the entrance or the beam ends at the overhang, the little vents at the side of the facade, those little things to break it up and create visual interest and make something that we think is cute and helps it fit into the fabric of the street. As we walk up and down Wellington there are a series of pretty tall houses from the street perspective because they're built very close to the street. And so a lot of them are pretty sheer. And so we thought that the L made some sense because it gave some relief, that that staggering back the second floor again gave relief from the mass. So I think that's all that I'd like to say for now, unless you guys have questions.
Stephen, what's the driveway? It's on the drawings, but what is it?
The driveway material, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you know what you decided on. I don't know. I don't remember offhand.
Okay. Concrete.
And we're
I
debating
think we were gonna do pavers for that, but concrete would be fine too.
sand set pavers.
Yeah.
Sand set like concrete pavers. Yeah.
Or like
We'd also
stamped
look-
concrete that looks pretty, you know.
You know what you have in the calculation for the impervious surfaces? Because if it's a poured in place concrete stamp, that's one drainage versus set in sand pavers would be a different kind of drainage.
Yeah, John, you helped do the calculations. You can on the cover sheet, and do you know what material was calculated for the driveway, either pervious or impervious?
We considered pervious concrete.
And so that could come in the form of sand set pavers, or pervious concrete would actually do a better job of that. And so we were looking at samples of pervious concrete that are kind of neat.
Stephen, one of the questions I had was just the turning radius getting in and out of the garage. I'm just curious if you've inspected that or had anybody look into that. Because you're moving that facade out towards that property line, and that's the access into the garage. Is it realistic to make that turn out of that garage? I imagine you could get into it, but is that a realistic location for that? And could you talk about that turning radius a little bit?
It's based on a 20-foot radius, which is the standard kind of old school automobile, American automobile kind of from graphic standards. And so you pull in at a doable radius and pull out in the same way. And so it works, but you'll have to get used to it, right? Because it's not, you don't kind of drive straight off the street and then make a turn. You kind of just, the whole thing is one continuous turn. So yes, you'll be able to get in and out, and their intent is to park inside the garage with the car, one car. You can't 3-point turn out.
No, that's why I was looking at it. It's a back all the way out onto the street.
Yeah.
Scenario there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't necessarily have a question, but I'll have a comment and maybe you can talk about it a little. So, you know, the downhill neighbors, as you saw, they were concerned about privacy issues. And I think, you know, that's true anytime anyone builds a second-story house next to somebody who's accustomed to having a one-story house next to them. And, you know, people have the right to build a two-story house. So it's often a dramatic change. I walked in their backyard to look at it, the story poles, and I agree completely with what you said, Stephen, about, you know, most of what you're looking at as far as the house is concerned is just the roof, which is not a privacy issue at all. Where their privacy issue comes in is their yard, and the way the house is centered, their yard is, you know, farther from the building. But you look up at those windows, and I was looking at the mass, and although it seems that the roof line is only, you know, 3 to 5 feet taller in one section, which is looking up the hill, it's on the right, so it would be closest to the hillside where you already have some mass. In the current version, it doesn't seem like it's that big of an increase, but instead of it just being for a third of the house, that higher roof line goes all the way across. And then from looking at the plans, where I'm seeing this sort of 3 smaller windows that are arched looking east now, what you have on the screen share, it seems looking on the other way, which are probably the nicer views of the mountain, but also the views down into their yard, there's a lot more glazing. And then you've also got the deck, which looks beautiful architecturally, but I know a lot of times we don't have upper level decks in Ross, especially when you're close to the setback lines, as it were. So maybe you could sort of show people that side of the house and talk about that.
Sure. And I'll also share a photograph. Maybe John, you can relinquish, and I'll show a photograph taken from the current. You see this photograph of the neighbor's roof here? This is taken out of the bedroom window, for the current bedroom window, which is kind of a little bit in between, right? Like it's a little lower than where they will be, but it's higher than living space, if that makes sense. So now if you can remember what this looks like. So
I'm sorry, you're saying the new window will be higher or lower than this current one is?
Now we'll flip back and I'll show you where this was taken so you can orient. But you can see from here, you don't see very much yard, you don't see very much window, you just see a lot of roof. And now if you could share the elevation, the before and after elevation, we can orient everyone to from where that was taken. And the balcony at the front, Mark, while we're flipping to the elevation, I agree, we don't encourage entertaining terraces or maybe terraces at all, generally, kind of that are going to threaten someone's privacy. It felt like a really nice way to make some Spanish style detail that would kind of soften the facade off of their master. No one uses those terraces, you know, so we're thinking that it's a place to put a couple pots and pretty plants that you see from inside the bedroom suite. And then it makes for an interesting facade, but not that it's a place to really hang out. And I don't think it's really mission critical for the program. So on the upper drawing is the existing elevation, and that window that is where John is pointing is the bedroom window, the current child's bedroom window. And that now, John, if you could transpose, you can see where the blue line is there. And so put your cursor where the window is approximately. It's just below right there.
Yeah.
And
And
so-
that's currently very visible from just standing, like I was standing in the backyard
Yeah.
and I could see the entire window and below it
Okay,
of
cool.
that one, it's covered in a weird tinfoil
Yeah.
covering.
So that from the photo, from our perspective, I haven't walked extensively on the neighbor's property, but it made it feel like you're a lot of the backyard and the windows are kind of shielded because of the shadow of itself, of the neighbor's own building. And so the windows are getting slightly taller. The working from right to left, the bedrooms in this new elevation that are proposed are an office or a small room that will be used as an office, could be used as a baby room or something like that. And then John, what's the little one next to the left of that? I can't remember right now. I have to look at the plan. Do you know? And then the next one over is the bathroom, the primary bedroom bathroom.
Yep,
And-
this is the shower, and then this is the bathroom.
Thanks. So they're both the bathroom. So Ashley and Nick will want privacy in their bathroom, as you can imagine, and have thought about frosting those windows and have been talking to the neighbor about potentially frosting those windows. And then the one on the left there is the primary bedroom, which I think is a little bit more out of the picture plane. Or maybe Mark, better having just walked in their backyard. But
So I'm not sure about the bedroom one. I'd have to go back and see because I didn't have the window plan when I was there. But for sure, the existing one and to the left of it, so it would be in this drawing, I guess the bathroom, the larger of the bathroom windows and the office one, for sure, as you're standing in their backyard, you would see top to bottom of those windows.
Understood.
Even though from your picture that you showed, it doesn't look like you would at all, but just standing in their backyard, I see that and there's no rule that you can't see windows of someone's second story. I'm just saying it does seem like I understand why they're concerned about it. If you stood in their yard, you would definitely see that area and it would look like someone was looking down at you.
Yeah, I understand. I can appreciate that. I mean, all the houses are very tight up and down the street and everyone looks into all these windows. That said, we don't want to create a condition that, exacerbates something that's uncomfortable or something like that. So.
You guys, I have a question. Can you see me? I lost complete connectivity and now
We see.
Oh, yeah, we see you. We see and
my
hear you fine.
internet
Joey.
went out and I'm doing it on my mobile hotspot from my office. I don't know what happened. So you can see me. I can just see you, Stephen.
Oh, well.
He's the best looking one anyway, but we can
All
see
right.
and hear you, Joey.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
We were just saying, Joey, if you missed it, that the windows, let's see, the existing house has a bedroom window that faces the neighbor downhill, and it's in a very similar position as windows that are.
Yes, I caught that. I cut out right after you drew the line down to show the window on the existing facade is kind of in the same place.
Okay, cool.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
Okay, sorry, that was my only comments, questions on that. Does anyone else from the ADR have any questions of either John or Stephen before we open it up to the public for a comment?
Is there any landscaping being proposed with this?
Yeah, John, maybe you can flip to the landscape plan and you or Nick or Ashley should probably describe this because you guys are more familiar with the plants that are being selected and that. So there's a low fence that's being proposed. You saw that in the rendering, which is a combination of stucco and metal and so forth. And it's pretty low. And then there's planting both in front of it and behind it. So there's low planting in front of it and then kind of a, I don't know what species is, maybe John or Ashley knows for the hedge that's behind the fence.
The proposal is for lavender to be kind of across the front of the fence to kind of mediate the street kind of to the, I guess, the bottom of the metalwork of the fence.
Yeah.
And then behind there is the box leaf, I don't even know how to say that, unimus?
I don't know what that looks like.
Euonymus.
Yeah.
It's the same as what's across the street at Nancy's house, the hedge in front of her home, which we love. So that kind of inspired it.
And that runs all the way along the fence.
And on the fence line to the neighbor downhill there too.
Then there's a couple of trees that are going to be remaining in the front yard. There's the redwood, there's an old oak, there's a bay tree.
That's it.
That's it.
And currently there's a artificial lawn there. Is that what's proposed? I see lawn. Is that new lawn? Is that artificial lawn, or just curious?
Yeah,
Ashley?
we'll be keeping the turf,
Sure.
not the same turf, but laying some new turf just for water conservation purposes more
Got
than anything.
Good idea. Okay, if there are no more ADR questions, I will open it up to the public. Patrick, I believe you have a better view. I cannot see if anyone in the public is raising their hand. I'm assuming there's probably going to be one or two comments from the audience.
So I am not seeing any raised hands at the moment.
Okay, well, we all read the neighbors, the downstairs neighbors, sorry, the downhill neighbors had the concerns about privacy. Everyone else was in support of it. One gentleman thought you were ridiculous, Stephen, for your conservative architectural
And it was that guy also.
renderings where you don't have a third story and where Ross has building codes. Could you please make this an apartment building next time?
That's right. That's right.
Mark, if I could just interrupt real quickly, I think
Please.
Philip may be trying to get our attention, but he's on mute. I think that's what's happening there. I'm not sure if.
And there's also, I'm sorry, who's Nicholas Hudson? I see him. I'm not sure if he wants to comment, but sorry, but if Philip, can we unmute Philip first?
I think he is unmuted now.
Am I unmuted?
Yes,
Yes,
you are.
we can
Please
hear
go
you.
ahead, Philip. Sorry for that.
All right, thank you. My problem. My name is Phil Cecchetini. I live at 58 Wellington with my wife Joyce Konigsberg, which is 2 houses down from Amanda and Nick's house. I share with 66 privacy concerns about the house, about the height and the opportunity for a clear vision line down into our backyard, which is really our only total privacy area on the property. So it's used for nude sunbathing and barbecuing. I'm sorry, sunbathing and barbecuing.
Hopefully not at the same time.
Yeah, not at the same time.
That's dangerous, Philip.
That's our concern. As some of you may know, our house is on the market. And just based on the story polls, we have already had 2 people negatively comment about the height shown by the story polls and telling them that a window would be there, increase their concern. So that's it. That's our concern. We would like to see some way to ameliorate that. I think we have a more serious privacy concern than 66.
Thank you, Philip.
Just since you guys mentioned my name's Nicholas Hudson. My wife,
Alex, hi.
Alexander, and I are about to move into 66 Wellington. And, we share pretty much the same concern with the downhill neighbor 60.
58. Minus the nude
58,
sunbathing.
yeah. No nude sunbathing. looking from the plans, if you see on the other side of the house, there is some effort to minimize the window. And so we're just asking for the same effort, knowing that if you do stand in our backyard, I really believe that the entire bank of windows will be visible from top to bottom. Some of them are bathrooms, some of them are, intimate living spaces, and it would be nice to have that interface sort of managed as best as possible. We totally respect the fact that the property needs to be redeveloped, and we want to be good neighbors and just look for some consideration.
Right. And we're new, we haven't even moved in yet. And I know this has been a long conversation, so apologies that we're a little late to the party on this, but we do love like what it does look beautiful. And so, yeah, just the main concern is just the windows, which we've talked with Nick and Ashley about. And so just keeping that communication open with solutions on privacy glass was mentioned, landscape, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your respectful letter that you sent to the ADR earlier in the week. And this is the first time the ADR has discussed this, so you're really not late to any of this. And the seller was nice enough to let me into the yard to view it today. Okay, are there any other questions or comments from the audience? Okay, I will then bring it back to the ADR for recommendations. I'll go first just because I spoke before. First of all, I think it's great to redevelop the lot. If I was the homeowner, I would be building or proposing a very similar size and configuration house. I think it makes the most sense. Having a second story makes a lot of sense. If I was either one of the two neighbors directly downhill, especially the adjacent neighbor whose yard I walked in, I'd be bummed, and I'd realize that this was a big change in my privacy, and there are a lot of windows looking down, and there's an open deck that's very close to the property line, and certainly not violating the property line. So it's sort of difficult, and I'd hope for less windows looking west down to the downhill neighbor, especially if some are just 6 feet tall windows that are in a bathroom. I think they're about 6 feet tall on the west side for the main bathroom windows. It seems like a lot of windows just for a bathroom where you're going to want to have them covered anyway. But as far as the height and the scale of the project, I think all that seems fine. It's just really my only concern at all would be those privacy issues. And I'd like other ADR members to weigh in with their thoughts.
Who's next?
That could be you if you'd like, Joey.
Okay, I will go. I have a kind of an outline of comments here. First and foremost, I think it's very well cited, and I like the shape and the form of it. And I think it's pretty much almost the only shape that works on that lot. So I think that's very well done. I will say that new Spanish houses make me very nervous because they can turn out very cheesy looking if the materials aren't exactly right. So I would really like to see these materials and look at them and touch them. But I think you all would agree with me, there's a difference between the classic 1920s Spanish houses that are so charming and then poorly rendered modern versions of Spanish houses that just don't have the quality details. So that would be really important to me, particularly since it's basically a white house. It's an oyster colored house with a tile roof. I just would want to see those materials and get a feeling for the quality of them. that would be super important, especially because it's such a bigger house than it used to be. To get to the elephant in the room is the west elevation with the bedroom windows facing the downhill neighbors. And I do think those could be lessened. One is over a bathtub, one's in a storage area. They don't have to be such big windows. I am okay with the second story balcony because it's off of a main bedroom, and I really don't think generally people like those. They don't spend a whole lot of time out there on chairs hanging out and look, it's just, to me, the benefit of that being a relief in the facade outweighs the fact that it's a second story balcony. It's not really an entertaining space, but I do think the lantern effect on the second story row of windows on the west facade could really be helped. I don't even know if you really need skylights there. I think you could just calm that whole elevation down and provide less light, less chances for privacy to be breached there with the nude sunbathers 2 doors down. Then, hold on, I've got a few more things here. Just a minute. Oh, the landscape. The driveway seems very severe to me in concrete, as well as that retaining wall that is rendered in concrete. I think there could be a change of material there, that it could be faced with stone. Maybe the driveway has, pavers that have sand between them or some kind of a border. It just looks, the combination of that with a stucco house seems like an awful lot of hardscape to me when you compare it to, say, a little brown shingled house with, a little more greenery around it, which is more of the common house in Ross. So I would urge you to make that a softer driveway, because that's what a lot of people, that's the first thing they see. And then lastly, second to lastly, lavender is not going to do very well there at the front of the fence, because it's a really shady part of the lot under redwoods, and lavender needs a lot of sun. So that's just a little bit of a comment there, but in terms of the height and the scale, I think it's fine, and it's their right to recreate what they had and bring this building up to current standards. It's pretty subpar right now and definitely needs to be improved. That's it.
Thank you, Joey. Mark or Laura, who would like to go next?
I can jump in unless you want to, Laura. She might be on mute. All right. Yeah, I would echo siting of the project seems natural. I think I talked a little bit about that garage access, the driveway access. While I hear you, Stephen, I also heard you talk about some design car standards that might be a little out of date. Some of the cars.
No, those radiuses are larger, is what I meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they might be.
The old Buick is what I mean.
So you have an 18-foot deep garage, right? Mm-hmm. Normally, you'd kind of see a 20-foot garage. The cars that people drive these days are, squeaking in. They're substantial. The one I'm not sure
the door.
If the Ghirardellis have. The one in the driveway was pretty substantive.
Thank you.
So I look at the practicality of that.
Grant, can you bring that package in?
Oh,
if you're in the middle of the game, you can wait.
I think Mark is still unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I think there is the reality of actually getting one of their cars in there is tough. I just point that out. I would expect it to be a difficult task. This is a small house, so they're probably, this reality is probably going to be utilized for storage more than anything else versus cars. But that's their rights. I would love to see it. I don't think you can move that retaining wall to that side to give a little more access to make it more plausible for a car to really get in there. But I point that out as something that seems a challenge. I think I love the detail over the the balcony off the master bedroom, I wondered if you would carry that forth to the balcony that's over the garage. Just, I think it's a nice little set of details you've got there. I'm not sure you need the railing, but those punched openings really add another level. And I think to Joey's comment, this is about the details. It's about those exposed, beams coming off the roof. It's, the brackets for the roof, the detailing around the windows. I'm assuming those are steel windows, Stephen?
We haven't decided, not necessarily, because steel is, as you know, 3 times the cost of either clad or painted wood windows. So the idea is that they be dark sash and traditional shape muntins and so forth, but we don't know yet if they be steel. Yeah.
Yeah, if the owner wanted to throw the splash the cash, so to speak, that would be beautiful, of course. But I think dark is the way to go there. Maybe that's one way to put it. And the styles as narrow as possible to kind of match that style. But I like that detailing you have on that one balcony, and I think it, in some form or another, could be carried over to the other one.
That's a great idea with a little bit of cornice and a little bit of detail.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
Got a little opportunity to kind of.
So we wouldn't do the railing because it's not meant to, but to have it.
Right. Yeah, you can figure out what kind of would carry that around, I guess, and provide a little more relief to that facade as well, because you do see that from the street.
Yeah.
And on the sort of finishes note, you have a drive it listed there, I think, for the stucco. I think I hope that whatever stucco you do end up using is pretty high quality. I think that's when you have a light color, any imperfections or any kind of subtleties in the construction can stand out. But I think this could really be nice if it's a really high quality stucco. I'm not saying drive it is not, but I'm kind of hinting that it's not.
How about smooth trowel?
I thought about that, Joey. I don't know how Stephen would feel or the owners would feel about that.
Smooth trowel has a lot of vulnerability to cracking and has a host of problems. The lime cast version of Drive It is pretty great. Looks like limestone, looks pretty nice, and hides the evils. What would be probably even nicer is like a real limestone plaster. And so we can do some samples. Nick is texting me saying, remind them that I'm a builder. Nick builds houses, does really high-end homes for people as a living. He's like, I'm gonna make this nice, so he's pointing out that he too is gonna be interested in the quality appearance of the material. So he's
excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Along that line, Stephen, I don't know, because I have to admit, I'm not as familiar with that Drive It product, but is there going to be an articulation of any control joints on the facade that you think you can get away without it on this particular one without it cracking a bunch?
I mean, our house is done in Drive It lime cast, if you've seen our stucco, and the stucco manufacturers or the appliers recommend a control joint every 100 square feet. You just don't do it in residential because it's too ugly. And so what you're vulnerable to is subtle small cracking at the corners of the windows out diagonally and so forth. And as a homeowner or a builder, or as a homeowner, you're notified of this vulnerability and you say, yeah, but I don't want the recessed aluminum channel reveals that they have on big box stores. So yes and no. I mean,
okay.
You're not supposed to, but you do because the alternative is too unattractive.
Okay. Yeah, I think knowing that these are issues and you're thinking through them is really the key for comment, right? You don't want to forget about it or you don't want to put it in. And if you were intending to put them in, we would want to see them, if that was the case.
No.
I think to adjust the windows, I could see removing that, I guess it's southernmost window altogether out of the store, what is labeled as storage, but you mentioned could be an office. You already have a set of windows in there that's facing south, recognizing that does face into the hillside. But given this is kind of a main focal point of the neighbor's yard, I could kind of see removing that particular set of windows altogether to minimize the amount that's staring into their.
The problem is, I guess I'll let you know. So it faces the hillside out to the south there, and it gets crushed by the bay trees there. There's no, the hillside starts to ramp up so steeply that there's no light on that side. So tough.
I totally understand that. I think with the addition of the skylight, I think you have in there as well. You might be able to find a happy balance between those southern hill-facing windows and a skylight, and avoiding that particular most egregious set of windows that really do stare right down the backyard. I recognize those other ones are more likely to be frosted and more likely to be less occupied, right, in the shower. that's very, very short, especially with no water these days. And then the one that's further up in the bedroom, you know, kind of more looks over the roof, right? I don't perceive that to be a backyard in position. So those would be, that would be my you know, mitigating pitch, is to say just remove those two windows out back there. And then overall, you know, I felt as you approach the site, even though it's sort of backed up with this hillside, it is significantly taller than what we're looking at today. And I wondered if you could find it in your hearts to drop it, you know, take a foot out of that bottom level and not make it 10-foot floor to ceiling, make it 9, just because you can't change the roof pitch, right? I'm not asking you to make 8-foot ceilings in the second floor, but I would pull this down as much as you can. I think you've already manipulated the site a little bit to minimize cut and fill, because I think you're coming up a little and down a little, you're sort of going in between. If there's any opportunity to shrink this, you know, a foot makes a difference, 18 inches makes a difference. If you can find it either in the siding of the finished floor level or dropping that first floor from 10 to 9, I think 9 is still a very generous height for a living space. So I think there's room in there to bring this down just a little bit, so it's not as tall, because it's a pretty tall building. You know, when you look at the westernmost neighbors. I think that was it. I think that summarizes my comments. That's and overall, I think it's a very nice addition to the town, and I think it's a nice looking project.
Laura?
Okay, I don't have too much to add. I think, you know, I live up the hill, so I walk by the property often, and I know it's very exposed to all the walkers in the neighborhood. So, I mean, this is definitely a great addition. I understand the site location, and I think it's respectful to stay within the existing square footage, and understand how that massing volume needs to come forward to the north to basically get the livable space that they need for their home. So I think the one thing that seems to be a hot topic is the windows on the west facing facade. These ones were street facing and they want the privacy in their home. You know, this rendering, it shows that the windows look much smaller. So I guess the question would just be the scale of the west facing windows, and if there is any way to just kind of look at that with the neighbor's perspective in mind and revisit that a bit. But I don't think I actually have any other comments.
Thank you, Laura. And just I'll add that of the people that did make the comments, I agree with Joey's suggestion to try to break up the driveway retaining wall material by maybe having, you know, whether it's pavers in the driveway and then a slightly different material on the wall, or just something so it looks more broken up and softens a bit. I do think that was a good idea. And I also like Mark's idea of matching the above the garage balcony, we'll call it, even though it's not, with the master bedroom balcony. I thought both of those were nice design suggestions. Okay, Matthew, so it seems everybody is unanimous in their support of the overall massing and location of the house, with just a few of the design issues we've spoken about. And then, as Joey referred to it, the elephant in the room is the window privacy being different for the downhill neighbors than it is on the street side of the house. Mark had a suggestion, which I actually think is a good suggestion. But you know, it's up to the owners and Stephen to see where they want to go with trying to address the privacy issues of the downstairs neighbors.
I also agree with trying to take a foot out of the elevation. I think a 9-foot ceiling on the first floor for such a small house would be really acceptable and fine. And it would be a nod toward just bringing the whole thing down in scale a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Joey.
So Chair Krushnit, I'd like to just ask ADR members to confirm, the 4 voting ADR members to confirm that they're also supportive of the individual comments made by the other ADR group members in forwarding this recommendation, so that we have a unanimous recommendation as far as suggestions and comments.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Matthew, and thank you, all of you who have attended and presented. We will now move on to the next item, which is a conceptual advisory design review for the public restroom enclosures. Also, Mark, Fritz, was I not on mute when I went to the door to get that package?
It did not sound as if you were.
Oh, that's weird. I clicked mute before I stood up and after someone knocked on the door. Okay, I'll have to check into why that doesn't work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair Krushnet, ADR group members, Matthew Weintraub, planner. The proposal before you, this is conceptual advisory design review for the Ross Property Owner Association's proposal for public restroom enclosures at Frederick Allen Park and Natalie Coffin Green Park. I'll provide an overview of the project and then turn it over to Mark Fritz or whoever might also want to comment. Here are the plan views prepared by RPOA. They show that the enclosures would essentially be pretty tight around the existing toilet structures with some area for clearance of the doors as well as entry area. Here are elevations and sections and materials. These are non-roofed structures. So these are essentially fenced enclosures. Just one note that staff would make on the elevation. There appears to be no gap in the bottom. That might be something that might need to be built in for floodwater management to allow water to flow underneath the enclosures. Might also be a good idea just from a standpoint of security and privacy to be able to see if someone is standing inside the enclosure before walking in. So there might be perhaps a 2-inch gap proposed at the bottom of the enclosures. Here are some pictures of the area at Natalie Coffin Green. It appears that there is enough room for the proposed enclosures that might require some shifting of these existing toilet structures. As you can see, they are pretty close to the edge of the concrete pad. So those may need to be shifted forward, and or the enclosure may need to extend off of the pad. So that's something to consider. Also, there is this tree, this very small tree that's located pretty close to where the enclosure might be. So that's also something that may have to be considered as to whether or not there might be a tree impact. It's not clear that this is an important or significant tree, but that's just something to note. And then with respect to Frederick Allen Park, here's just a site plan that I prepared showing the existing location on the east side of the path. The proposal, and there does not appear to be room for the enclosures in the current location. So the proposal would require moving the existing toilet to the opposite side of the path, to the west side. And I outlined just 2 potential locations. I believe this location here is the preferred location. And this is the not or less preferred location. And here are those pictures of those locations. So the preferred location is tucked further behind the building, as well as behind this little rock planter, as well as where the current trash enclosures are lined up. And there could be opportunity for additional screening across this area here. And this area has been measured out. It appears that the enclosure could fit into this area, but that would need to be verified. And so here's looking at the other direction. In the preferred location, the enclosure would be located behind these trash bins and behind this planter. It would almost be non-visible with screening. The less preferred location would be in front here, where there's obviously room, but much greater visibility.
Matthew, are those public garbage cans, or those garbage cans owned by the building tenants there?
They're not public, so I believe they're owned by the tenants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just in summary, staff requests that the ADR group provide comments and suggestions to the applicant regarding the merits of the project design, consistent with design review. And those comments would be considered by the applicant and in any future development of this project. And unless there are further questions on my visuals, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Matt, could you go back to the sketch of it, the elevations? Sorry.
No problem.
And would it have foundations, and how would it have shear resistance? It would have to be engineered, I guess, right?
Yeah, let me jump in on that one, Steve. So this, if I could, Matthew, unless you want to answer that question. I don't want to cut you off. So just a quick backstory on this one. And one I want to thank, Joey has already seen these. She did a little peer review on these sketches for me a month or two ago. So I want to thank you for that, Joey. So I joined the RPOA board. Everyone gets a project. I got assigned to beautify the bathrooms in some way, shape, or form.
Compliment.
It is a compliment, of course. The intent of some earlier comments was that we needed restrooms on the common, more permanent restrooms on the common. Joe Chin has advised that that's unlikely to happen anytime soon. So a mitigating plan or strategy was to stick with the existing porta potties and provide an enclosure so they're not visually so disturbing for the two locations, one in town and one in Natalie Coffin Green. In the process of that, I went out and looked at one that is a similar kind of scenario out in Olema. If anyone's familiar with that little grocery store, there's a public restroom kind of across the parking lot. It's essentially shielded by a fence structure that looks similar to this. That has two of the larger accessible porta potty units in there. So the thought was kind of—
I've used those.
Yes, I think many of us probably have. And it's essentially providing visual blockage. However, you still want to know that they're there. So tucking them away, making them completely disappear defeats the purpose of having people know that they're actually there. So if I break this up into two conversations, the ones up in Natalie Coffin Green Park more or less sit in the same location that they are today, as Matthew presented. We rotate them a little bit so that the access to that in the open space is in from the parking lot. You kind of, it's a wide 5 to 6 foot opening, so you'd be able to see them. The town has stated that they want to keep the large and the small unit up there. So I designed it so that it could be flexible enough to do that. And then just quickly on the materials, this was priced out as redwood or cedar. Obviously building materials right now are very expensive. So I think that the decision to go between one or the other might be financially driven. The intent here was to provide a little bit of animation for what is essentially a fence by putting sort of this 2x rusticated, quote unquote rusticated base that breaks up the mass, and then doing something that's a little chevron pattern to further animate that facade. As far as Stephen's question, these would be set, there are 4x4s or 4x6s set in concrete, and most likely they'll be needing a brace across the top to, in the corners to provide some lateral stability. There is a runner that runs around the entire thing on a 2x12 at the top to provide that a little bit of stability as well. They're essentially fences with 4x6 posts set in concrete. To the comment about the base, it's priced out as pressure treated base on the bottom, right? The bottommost piece of the horizontal 2x6 down there. If it, thinking about the flooding, that could be raised up and I think be successful as well. The pad that Matthew noted at Natalie Coffin Green Park, the extended parking lot paving, is brand new. I had mentioned to Joe and sent him the sketches, and when they repaved that parking lot, they extended the pavement so that we could have something more solid to place the units on. So that's great. I didn't happen to give him any dimensions, but he had seen the sketches, so it looks like it will fit if we move those units. And yeah, that tree is like a little, I think we can probably get out without having to move that tree on my dimensions, but we'll have to stake this out to see permanently that case. As far as the finishes go, I was thinking to leave them natural so that we did not have to continue to maintain them as far as the town goes, and they would fade into the background. Joey recommended them to be dark stained. I think that's totally appropriate. I was just thinking, are we going to pay to maintain that dark stain, every 2 or 3 years? That'd be something we would want to do. But I think that's a suggestion I'd look to the ADR for. Last but not least, the location at the town. Where the unit sits today is forced right up against the chain link fence. You can kind of see it in that picture on the right. I mean, it's right up against that. There's not a lot of opportunity for relief in front of the unit. So one of the suggestions was to move it across, as Matthew showed in his plan, behind that rock planter. The downside of that is it's not as visible from the common, where people generally are coming from for the most part. Obviously there's Frederick Allen traffic as well, but a lot of the folks from the common, because we don't have a restroom over there that's open all the time, see the unit from across the street and make their way over there. If it's tucked behind the commercial building, I was a bit nervous that it wouldn't be seen. So that's Matthew and I had that back and forth, and that's why he suggested maybe we move it in front of what are those temporary trash cans. And so this is something the RPOA wants to do, to take the dues and beautify the town a little bit. So that's why it's here today in front of the ADR, and I'm happy to answer additional questions or just throw myself at the whim of everyone here.
Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to.
No. Is there anyone left in the audience? No. Okay, I'll go. I think it's great. Good job. Put the fences around it. As far as the one near the Ross Commons, I agree with you that having it tucked behind the trash cans would be the best place. The second best would be in front of the trash cans. And the third best would be where it is now.
All right.
As you know, I like the design, the detailing of the wood. I think it would be great to not see those trash cans and not have them so prominent. And I'd rather see this than that. And I think I still would vote for it to be kind of have like a black green stain. And so what if you have to, that's not a huge job to stain that every couple of years. Just to really make it actually completely recede into the trees there. And then if you want to draw attention to it, that this actually, there are restrooms in Ross, you could design a really nice sign that maybe had the Town of Ross bear the logo and just say Town of Ross, restrooms.
You didn't say that the bear would be peeing, right?
Yeah, the bear should be.
Bear would be peeing. Absolutely. That's a guarantee.
You could make it very elegant and have it a dark black green stain with a nice little sign on it that had their logo and restrooms.
Okay. There would be a restroom sign. That is actually something I didn't put in my drawings, but we would need to sign it in some way. So I think that's a great recommendation.
But like not a cheesy one, like a nice, with our logo. But I would tuck it back there and try to figure out a way for those garbage cans not to be so visible.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
I'll go ahead. I agree. You guys did a great job in the design. I think that it's pretty to have the chevron and a little bit of relief and that kind of thing. The pressure treated is not very good looking. Also, I don't think that it should touch the dirt anyway. I think you should let the leaves and stuff kind of move around and not pile up against. So
yeah,
I think you could do it just the cedar personally and hold it above by like 4 inches or whatever dimension is appropriate. And then kind of avoid that problem altogether. I like the position tucked behind, and I think a sign is appropriate somewhere on the common or near the fence here or something. I slightly prefer the natural color, but I think a dark stain would be great too. Thanks for contributing your time, you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Laura, do you have any thoughts?
No, I think it's a great design. I'm so tired. Sorry. I don't have anything to add.
Do you know, Laura, that your Michigan Attorney General was in Ross this last couple weeks?
Can you see my Detroit sweatshirt?
Nice. In regards to those trash cans, you also might want to think, if you're going to put it in front of them, you do need to make sure that those people have relatively easy access to going. I don't know where they put them there, if they have to move them out on the curb or where exactly they move those every week. I'm not sure where that is. But if you do have it in front of it, you sort of need to coordinate something regarding them.
Yeah, I think even behind it, they need to be addressed. I have never had a conversation with them. That's something I probably need to do. Because
if you tuck it behind the wall, obviously you don't need to worry about what they do. But if you have it in front of that, then they might end up just moving those in front of the new structure anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's the bummer, is that this beautiful new structure is going to have those garbage cans in front of it.
And a porta potty behind it.
Any thoughts about trying? I mean, there are a lot of them. I was trying to think in my head, should I try to incorporate them into an area and do a low fence around those or something to provide a little almost shielding of their 8 garbage cans or 7 garbage cans?
Yeah, I mean, we would make homeowners do that.
We probably would. It's a thought. I don't know about budget, but I will look into maybe there's some combo of the two that we could propose to make that more successful.
It'd be better if they had an offsite, or not offsite, sorry, closer to the house, to the building, or if they could get rid of the garbage cans properly on their property would be great.
Yeah, parallel to their building as opposed to perpendicular to their building. Because you're right, Joey, a homeowner couldn't just leave the garbage cans out like that all week long.
No,
Yeah, I mean, somebody would complain.
And I don't think that design gets better if you stretch it out to 30 feet long to cover a bunch of garbage cans or anything, you know?
No, I was trying to come up in my head real quickly, like, what if I aggregate them in a little cluster? And, I haven't given that any thought, Stephen. So you're right. It doesn't get much better.
You're not in the business of garbage enclosure for them. No, I don't think so.
Well, there's no reason why those things couldn't be parallel to the building.
Right.
Yeah, they are the commercial garbage cans, I believe, for the building, and the residential garbage cans. Maybe there's a way they can run parallel to the building or be tucked back closer to the building. My guess is they leave them there so that they don't ever take them out. I think the garbage truck just pulls right up next to them and they never have to move them to the street or anything else. That's my guess. But we can work with them.
Okay. So everyone approves, and Mark can figure out the exact location. Some people liked it in front and some people liked it behind the garbage cans.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, everyone.
Well, thank you. Let's see, we have no communications. And I guess I can call to an end the only ADR meeting in history where both projects were presented by ADR members.
Good deal.
Feel blessed.
Chair
right,
Critson,
well-
if I could just chime in before
please.
we end the meeting. There's 2 announcements I wanted to make. One is that I mentioned before, we're working with Gates and Associates on an improvement and rehabilitation plan for the Ross Common. So the next step with that is we're going to be releasing a questionnaire probably this week, maybe tomorrow. We'll send a townwide email. We'll put it in the put it on the website, things like that. Basically, just to get feedback from the community on what's working with the Common, where they'd like to see improvements, and what are some ideas for the future if we get funding that we can actually add some amenities to the Common. So that's going to be published this week with the intent of taking it in front of the council for their August meeting. And then the other announcement is that we are currently updating the council chamber to be able to have video meetings in there. As far as I know, the relaxed public meeting rules will be ending on October 1st of this year. So we're most likely going to have to go back to some form of in-person meetings beginning in October. So enjoy these Zoom meetings while they last. We may be able to have some kind of hybrid method. That's another another policy that the council is going to be looking at in August. But we will be probably changing the format somewhat for these ADR meetings.
Okay,
That's all I got.
great. And you know, on that questionnaire, there are a lot of families, even with COVID, that travel in the summer. So you might not get a lot of answers from the school aged or the parents with school aged kids.
Mhm.
If you're trying to wrap it all up before August, you might want to think about delaying it till school's been back in session. If that's a possibility, even though it might delay things a little, because those are probably the parents or the residents that care most about the commons, are the people that have K through 8 kids.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely something we'll have to consider.
Okay, well, thank you. I move to adjourn the meeting, and it was nice seeing you all.
Happy rest of summer. See you in August.